2017 open at 9:35. Apologies. Apology for lateness from Dave McPherson. Oh, sorry, Dave. Right. And so, so do we need movers and seconds?
No. No, we don't need movers and seconds.
Okay. So, leave of absence of Philip Yong and Councillor Pascoe. So, and now we move to confirmation of the agenda. So I'll hand it over to Leanne, Democracy Manager.
Thank you. Kia ora tātou. Please note that the agenda is confirmed, noting the following points. That the order of the agenda will be flexible to accommodate external presenters and staff availability. That item 21, road stopping, part of Hillsborough Terrace, which was referred from the 12th of September Growth and Infrastructure Committee meeting, will be deferred to the 18th of October 2017 Council meeting for decision. That late item 24, Waikato Innovation Park Limited, update on sale and restructure, and the public excluded item C1, also related to Waikato Innovation Park Limited, update on sale and restructure, have been circulated under separate cover and will be taken as the last items on the agenda. The reasons for the late report are due to limitations on staff resources. The reason for part of the report being in public excluded is to enable Council to carry out commercial activities without disadvantage and to carry out negotiations. Item 23, Water Studies Report, has been circulated under separate cover. Item 10, 2017-18 Heritage Fund allocations on pages 41 to 51 of attachment 2 have been included in error. A replacement attachment has been circulated to elected members and is on your desk in front of you. Item 15, Central Library Seismic Rehabilitation. Additional information has been circulated to elected members under separate cover. Finally, the notice of motion from Mayor King regarding Hamilton Properties Limited, circulated to elected members under separate cover, will be tabled and taken with item 19 of this agenda, Hamilton Properties Limited. Thank you.
We have a mover, Councillor Casson as seconder, Councillor Bunting, all is for, any against, carried. Oh, sorry, debate. Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much. Mayor Andrew, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, I want to say that I wished I hadn't signed this document that you asked me to sign, because I didn't understand the implication and I felt a little bit under pressure. The second thing I want to talk about is the mayor's suggestion that came through an email yesterday, and I have no problems under the standing order to cut the questioning to 2 or 3 as long as it is enforced. And I would like to hear everyone's opinion at the end, because we've got such a meaty topic. So, but I'm happy with the 2 to 3 minute version, not the 5-minute version. Thank you.
Councillor Ange.
Look, my comment is to the CE on the expanse of this agenda. There are some meaty items, and look, I know we're under time pressure, but we always are. I think that we possibly should have, I don't know, reserved tomorrow to expand the meeting over time. I think it's bad governance to do it this way. There's, over $40 million of decisions and high public interest stuff here, and if we're going to 11 o'clock at night, we're going to make bad decisions. I'll be voting against the agenda, but purely because I don't accept late items. We are all together, unless it's absolutely urgent, decided at the start of this term that we wouldn't do that it's poor practice and poor governance. And I believe we could move this to the finance meeting. Look, I'm not going to bother moving a motion because nobody else has sort of raised an issue on that. But possibly if we get late in the day and we get to that item, that might be something we can do as a procedural motion, because I have a feeling we're all going to be at the end of our tether by then, and that again is another significant decision for the city. So I apologise, but I will be voting against the agenda.
Okay, Councillor Paula.
Just thank you. I think those points have been made, and there were a lot of good points made in the emails that went back and forth last night. I agree with the last-minute agendas. It's really difficult if you've had a full day and you get home and there's a unexpected courier parcel that you've just got to get through late at night. But I have to just the only reason I'm speaking today is because I'm not in favour of carrying the meeting over to tomorrow, because I have flights to Wellington after this meeting for the Policy Advisory Group, and that's been the case for some time. So, you know, we've just really got to try and get through it. But I think a lot of this goes back, as I said in my comments, to balancing the amount of important issues that are put in the agenda in the first place, so they can all be given their just desserts and focused on as they properly should be, because these are all important items, but we can't, there's only so much you can do in a day.
So, Councillor Paula, are you...
But I'm not going to vote against the agenda. I just think that I'd like that feedback noted. I think this needs to be addressed in forward council meetings.
Siggy, were you speaking for or against the motion?
I'm actually against it too.
Against? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Martin?
Yes, I mean, first of all, thank goodness we're meeting at 9:30 in the morning and not 1:30 under the previous administration, so that's a real plus under your leadership. But secondly, I think about 5 o'clock tonight we can have a bit of a rain check. I think at 5 o'clock tonight we do have an option if there are some critical issues, because the Finance Committee next week I think has got a reasonable agenda, so it is in the power of this council. This is the very good. It's in the power of this council when we get to 5 or 6 o'clock tonight to determine if, in fact, there are some items we have to hold over. I will be unusually disciplined today because we've had a very heavy agenda, and I'll try and limit my verbosity.
Okay. So, just for the record here, as last night's email, we'll limit speaking to 2 minutes and 1 minute for extra time. And I've got to run this meeting tight to keep it moving. So, understanding orders, 3 speakers for or against. I'll be asking for any speakers the other way, and then we'll be moving straight to the vote. So that's clearly understanding orders, which is where we all stand. So that's the way that we'll run this meeting to keep it moving. So we'll go to the board on this one.
Mayor Andrew?
Sure.
Notwithstanding the irony of the fact that we're making the meeting late by talking about how long the meeting's going to be, is it in with your purvey, like can you, as chair, control the length of questions or the amount of questions people ask not using standing orders? Is that something that you could do? Because it seems to me the general tone from people is that where we get bogged down is by asking lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of questions sometimes, rather than with the debate. And where the value, I know myself, I've changed my mind a couple of times from some really seriously good debate, and I would hate to see that limited. So is it possible that you could perhaps keep a very tight handle on the questions as opposed to the debate? I'd support the 2-3 minutes debate, by the way.
So questions are at the discretion of the chair. So we could, if I could ask members to hold their questions back until the end of the presentation, and then maybe come in once for questions per member. That'll keep that side of things moving.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Unless there's a point of clarification or something that needs to be brought back in. So.
All right.
All right. So we'll just go to the board on this one.
So we're approving the agenda, is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Councillor Southgate. Sorry. The motion is carried 9-4-2 against.
Okay, declarations of interest. There are no declarations of interest. Okay, I'll hand over to the Democracy Manager for the public forum. In the public forum, it's 3 minutes to speak, and we won't be taking any questions after the persons are speaking. So there'll be a bell ring at 2.5 minutes, and then at 3 minutes there'll be the bell when you need to stop speaking. Thank you.
Right. Good morning again. Thank you, Chair. Our first speaker, given that item 21 in relation to Hillsborough Terrace is now deferred to another meeting, our first speaker today is Louise Lahat. If you could come forward, please, Louise. Louise is speaking to item 15, Central Library Seismic Rehabilitation.
Tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Louise Lahat, and I am the president of LIANZA, the Library and Information Association. LIANZA advocates to support the success of libraries because of the crucial role they play in communities. Your decision-making is about the scale of the library service offer to be provided in the CBD. International research and trends reinforce the special place and role a central library has in a city centre, in placemaking and precinct development and activation, as an innovation hub that supports creative and entrepreneurial activity, as often the last non-commercial space available in the CBD, creating equity of access for all citizens and attracting individuals into the CBD, as a cultural beacon and centre of expertise in collecting, preserving, curating and sharing the history and memories of a city and its communities. Both overseas and locally, cities are still investing in central libraries. Christchurch is currently building a new central library to be a cultural hub for Christchurch and an important civic space that attracts people back into the central city. Tauranga City Council announced in August that the City Transformation Committee had approved the development of plans for a new central library. A new building provides us the opportunity to deliver a fit-for-purpose central library service and strongly supports a more vibrant, safe and successful city centre. The Central Library in Auckland, already a special destination for Aucklanders and visitors, provides unique experience based on its heritage and taonga and innovative programs, and works with other council units on activation events in the CBD, including Matariki and the Heritage Festival and Auckland Anniversary. A 2017 strategic review recommends that further investment would present significant opportunities, including the potential to be a game changer in terms of placemaking and precinct development, and to be the distinctive expression of a 21st century Auckland, and to allow the Central Library to operate as a high-value incubator for the city in partnership with IT and technology companies and communities. A new Central Library in South Shields, England, was used as a catalyst for regeneration and community cohesion for a coastal town which had suffered over many years from economic hardship. The unique and an innovative combination of 21st century library, digital media centre, community hub and national cultural institution has exceeded all expectations, bringing tangible social, cultural and economic benefits to South Shields. Nō reira, a central library with a rich, innovative and active service offer and reflection of the identity of its place can be a jewel in the crown for a city and a transformative opportunity for its communities. Tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you.
This is the question. Can we get that, a copy of that?
Absolutely.
So if you could leave a copy with Democracy, though.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker this morning is Catherine Parsons, President of the Friends of the Library. Catherine is also speaking to item 15, Central Library Seismic Rehabilitation. I should have mentioned, Catherine, sorry, I'm sure you're already aware that it's 3 minutes in the bell. Yeah.
I am aware. Kia ora koutou, Mayor and Councillors. Kia ora, particularly to Louise. The Friends want to begin with a brief reflection on what libraries are all about. It'll work in support of her words. Speak about the challenges faced here in our city, and then make some recommendations. Libraries Aotearoa recently produced this brochure, and I've got just a few spare copies, a limited edition item. But what they say is, it's an organisation representing all New Zealand libraries. They describe how libraries enable all ages on their journey to knowledge. They focus on putting people first. Librarians provide expert guidance and assistance. helping people navigate change and all that encompasses with services, tools and databases. Libraries are all about enriching knowledge networks. There are 5 challenges were identified in the Hamilton City Library Strategic Plan 2015 to 2025. The very first one, you might recall, was titled Strengthening Hamilton's Central City Identity. And it closes with, transforming the Central Library will play a key role in supporting a strong commercial central city in Hamilton. Well, we have a real challenge at the moment, but we believe today, we're here today to say that Hamilton City can take up the challenge. And we want to see some action both in the short term and the long term. We recommend that Council approve the upgrade to the Central City Library and install the Cardex system. And then in the immediate future, though, whilst this work takes place, we think Council should be doing something about access, for instance, providing a space for people to use the Aotearoa People's Network computers. We think it should change the pop-up Central Library to pop-up heritage and archives. There are 800 linear metres of archives that are currently out of action. We think that it should make available a selection of the local history collections, manuscripts, directories, genealogical materials and resources. Whilst not all of those 800 linear metres that I mentioned could be provided, at least some of the most frequently requested archives, manuscripts, maps, photographs and collections could be provided with the rest on a request basis. And on a personal note, I really think you should do something about the suppressed records. I think it's wrong that currently those cannot be seen. Our message to Hamilton City Council can be encapsulated in 4 words, all beginning with an A: access, accountability, adaptability, and aspiration. 1, provide access once again to the collections, computers, services and staff of the Central City Library. Show accountability and put people first. Demonstrate adaptability and provide some more short-term solutions whilst the building is repaired. And aspire to a central library building and a purpose-built library for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine. Our last speaker this morning is Holly Snape, CEO of Community Waikato, and Holly is speaking to item 18, Founders Theatre Update on Options. Welcome, Holly.
Thank you. I'd also like to say I totally support what these people are saying about the library. But just starting off, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we want to do as a community organisation and how we want to add value to our city. We feel that there's a real opportunity at the moment to think strategically about how to use the space just west of the CBD, specifically the area around Founders and the bowling club, which has been traditionally used by arts and sports, but we feel that the community sector has a lot to offer that space as well. So previously the community sector has been quite siloed and has worked in that way, unfortunately, and it's been quite counterproductive to us achieving our goals. I've been working in the community sector in Hamilton since around 2004, and this is the first time we've started seeing a real appetite that the sector has for collaboration and for partnership. And so we're really excited. We think now is the time that we can really look to centralise a lot of the services that are currently spread right throughout the city, which would create greater access for our community as well. We also want to look to share resources and overheads and maximise the impact that we can have on those accessing community services. We want to go beyond that too and look to how we might create an innovation space, an area to encourage collaboration and partnership and innovation, to think of new creative ways to address some of the old problems that we've had in the community. So what we want to do is create a community asset for Hamilton City. We don't want Hamilton City to pay for that. We believe the sector can pay for that, but we want a donation of the space, and specifically somewhere like Founders Theatre for its locality. We're looking to create that building, creating a purpose-built space for the community sector to come together to deliver direct-to-client services and capacity-building services like we do, plus an innovation space and a space for our creation of social enterprise. So we're really excited about what it could mean for the city. We've got good community support locally. We're currently in the process of going around the country looking at what other models are being used and what's working, what's not working, and where the challenges are. Basically what I'm here to do is give you an indication of what it is that we'd like to be doing for the city. We will put in a formal submission when the time is right, but I just wanted to put that out there now while this is on your agenda for you to start thinking about that as a concept for the city. 30 seconds to go.
Thank you, Holly. Okay, we now move to confirmation of the minutes, 24th of August 2017, page 6. Do we have a mover? Councillor James, a seconder. Councillor Paula, all those for. Any against? Carried. Page 18, confirmation of elected member briefing notes. 7th of September 2017, page 18. Do we have a mover? Councillor Ange, seconded by Councillor Leo.
Question on that, because I wanted something added into the options for Henimoa Park bowling site that I believe were discussed at that meeting and aren't quite captured by the bullet points, if I might, and I'll be very quick. I know pardon? Oh, page 21, just the 7 bullet points under the options for Henimoa Park. I don't see it mentioned there that there was a number of responses. The elected members were interested in how the site could be co-used by multiple users, and I don't see that reflected in the bullet points there, but I do remember a number of us saying that, you know, if we could have someone using it through the day and someone else using it through the night or whatever, and that there was some preference to flexible use of spaces with multiple users. Can we capture that?
I'm happy with that. General Manager, do you concur? Yep. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
All those for. Any against? Carried. Okay, we now move to item 8, page 22. Thank you, Luke and Lachlan.
Morning, Mayor King. Look, for elected members, I'll take the report as read, but effectively what I'm seeking your approval for is it's an administrative decision to declare the Part Operative District Plan fully operative, given the recent conclusion of the outstanding appeals to the Ruakura variation.
Okay, I'll move.
Happy to take any questions.
Just have a seconder here. Okay. Okay. So all those for. Any against? Carried. Okay. Tower Lakes, Luke can stay there.
7 seconds.
7 seconds.
So page 24.
Hopefully we'll be shorter on the next one. Once again, elected members, I'll take the report as read. This is once again a regulatory and administrative decision for you to make in relation to a private plan change application that's been submitted by the Perry's Group. So we received that application in July, and we've been working with the applicant to get it to this state. So the only decision that's requested of you now is to determine whether or not a process should commence. We're not asking you to endorse the project. It's really, can the process commence? My recommendation is that it should. My recommendation is that the plan change is accepted, and that we commence the processing, and equally that the matters heard and determined by independent commissioners. Happy to take any questions that you've got.
Okay, so just one lot of questions per elected member, please, and this is you need not confirmation of something to do with process. So Councillor Gary.
Thank you. There is a significant entity out there which will be could possibly adversely be affected. Does this process do anything to abate their rights to challenge the plan change?
No, no, not at all. If you endorse my recommendation and enable the plan change to be notified, any individual who's got an interest in the matter is able to make any representations in front of independent hearing commissioners to put their case forward either for or against a project.
Okay. The process, the option you've suggested, this is the council taking on the plan change, is that right? So there's one called adopting it and one being approving it or something. So just explain the difference between those two, please.
Yes.
Through you, Your Worship, the distinction between adopting and accepting the plan change.
Accepting, sorry, yeah.
Yes, so when you adopt, one of the options is for you to adopt the plan change. And an adoption means effectively that you take it over yourself and you become, or council becomes, the promoter of the plan change and the controller of the plan change and is responsible for all of the costs associated with the plan change. That is distinguished from the acceptance of the plan change, which is a different idea. That is one where you accept the plan change in the sense that you put it out for public consultation, but the promoter of the plan change remains the PERI entity. So, and in that sense, they are responsible for the costs of running the plan change. So the distinction is really one of control and cost.
So to be clear, we are doing the accept, well, the recommendation is the accept, which is PERIs would still own it?
Yes.
Still pay for it?
Yes.
Does it weaken or strengthen the proposal, whether depending on who owns it?
Not in my view, no. The strengths and weaknesses of the plan change are going to be determined on their own merits through a full hearing process with evidence and a full consideration under the Resource Management Act. Who promotes it and owns it in that sense is not influential in any way.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. Just one question, and it's probably to Kelvin actually. In his opinion, if this land came out of the industrial tranche, would that still leave us with enough industrial stock for future growth?
No. So that's part of the process that the process would determine.
Okay.
And that is part of the reports, and they would work through that process. So,
right, so
I wouldn't want to answer that without going through due process.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Councillor Paula.
Two very quick questions. On page 28, where there's a list of environmental considerations and other such things that might be considered under the various processes, if we go with the recommended process of D, which the staff are recommending, will all of those range of issues still be fully canvassed? That process allows for the full exploration of those.
So those matters have been addressed by the applicant, and they will be addressed through the hearings process.
And that would also include the relevance of any other plans like Future Proof or the regional policy statement. And
absolutely.
That kind of thing. Thank you. And there's
that is a non-exhaustive list.
It's an indicative list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I know. Yeah, I'm aware of that, and I just wanted to make sure that the fourth process did allow for a full range of exploration of the pros and cons, the issues, and everything like that. And then I was interested on page 33 in paragraph C, just talking about the special housing areas. This is not an application to the special housing area. This is a private plan change.
That's correct. This is a private plan change under the Resource Management Act. It's not an application to become a special housing area.
Yeah. It's in the application that becomes a special. No, it's not. Because they did indicate they would go both ways.
Yeah, so the PERI's group have not formally submitted an expression of interest to become a special housing area, so we don't have anything formally from them. And if they do submit that, that's a separate process to be evaluated under the Housing Accords and Special Housing Areas Act. The matter in front of you now is in relation to accepting a plan change for processing under the Resource Management Act.
That's why I was a little bit, when I read that, I thought, I wonder why that paragraph's in there when it's referring to whether or not it meets any expectations in the SHA. And I thought, I wasn't confused why you put there, but you put it there for a reason?
It's really just to the subparagraphs A, B, C, D, E and F relate to the option being considered under paragraph number 45, which is adopt the request, and those subparagraphs are my explanation of why my recommendation is not to adopt it in this instance.
Cool, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Just the costs, Luke, on page 35, under financial considerations, point 54.
Yes.
You've indicated would be at least 300,000. We have done plan changes in the past within this particular process. Can you give me a better understanding of how much it would cost?
Yeah, so at the time of writing, that was a high-level estimate. I can confirm for you that the costs are far significant beyond that. It's probably closer to at least $450,000, and that's an estimate of all the costs that would come to bear if council decided to adopt this, and that covers the costs of staff time, it covers the costs of external consultants that are needed to provide technical support to council in its evaluation of the plan change. It would cover commissioner costs, venue hire, printing, all sundries that are involved in that. So the significance of adopting is that we would wear those costs. It's an unbudgeted item in my cost centre. If it's an acceptance, those costs fall to the applicant.
And that any appeals cost would be on top of that?
Yeah, so I've excluded any appeals costs here on the basis that, one, I'm hoping there would be no appeals as a result of the process, but if there were, I'd bring back a full estimate to you on that, plus a briefing of what the position would be should we need to be involved in any appeals.
Right, okay. Thanks, Mayor Andrew. And, sorry, I'm ready to move when you...
Councillor, I just wanted to make it very clear, though, that those costs, if it's not already clear, those costs that Luke has described, those are costs associated with the adoption option, which is not the recommended option. The recommended option is acceptance, and those costs would fall to the applicant, Perry's. In effect, the recommended option, which is acceptance, is cost neutral from council's perspective.
Okay, yeah, great, thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Ange, seconded by myself. By all those for? Any against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to now move straight through to item 15 in the interests of the people who are in the gallery waiting to hear this item. So that's on page 98.
Oh, we're hooping through.
So, thank you, Debbie, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew.
General Manager, Lance.
Look, it's a comprehensive report. I'm not going to do a presentation on it. I just wanted to outline, you should have received the last 24 hours just a revised table which was on pages 102 and 103. The reason why there was a revision to that table on some of the costings is after the agenda item had been written, we got some engineering information back a bit around looking at the B options around having a central library in the Karo wing of the municipal building. There was Emily's team in facilities had a bit of work done around the floor loading there, which had been discussed at the briefing we had several weeks ago, and that actually showed the floor loading was adequate enough for getting in the higher shelves of books that we talked about, but the levels 1, 2 and 3 in the Karo building still have some issues around the strength of the floor to have the loading of heritage material or book loading. So, and you can see the staff recommendation, obviously throughout the report we've looked at a number of different options that were discussed at the briefing, so that's why I'm not going to do a big presentation. There was quite a bit of discussion at that briefing. We've gone away. Probably the one option which we presented in here, which is a little bit different to what we discussed at that briefing, is B1. That came out just to look at that option there, which we've included that information. And we've recommended that elected members consider option C1 because it's the most cost-effective and timely option, but it also leaves the opportunity for discussion around something that was mentioned in the public forum around what a central library could look like along with our community libraries during the LTP. So there'll be a number of proposals coming forward, and we have had a workshop too around the library's facilities plan where we're heading in the future, so it also leaves open that option. We will be bringing some proposals forward for discussion on that. And obviously that'll have to be considered with all the other pressures we have around our budgets as well. I'll leave it there. Rebecca's here, our libraries director, who can probably answer some of the more technical side of things. Unfortunately, Emily's not available, our facilities manager. She's in some all-day training, which has been booked for a long time. So we'll attempt to answer any technical questions as best as we can.
Thank you, Rebecca. Apologies, I'm calling you Debbie. Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Debbie. I just want to drill into the the C1, and I'll also now I'm very keen to get this thing up and going. But with regards to the Cardex system, the idea was to keep staff safe, so effectively a bunker room type situation, where they could disappear quickly and hide, based on how things were at the time. Do you think now that it's been closed for a year, that we have the opportunity to put that on hold, that Cardex system, and take other security measures that are perhaps a little bit more friendly? Or is it as urgent as it was back then? You'll never know.
Sorry. It is still my recommendation that we undertake that work. We have implemented a security guard on site as well. However, the Cardex system also provides some building control within the facility, so it provides secure access to stairwells and things which run throughout the building which aren't controlled at present, and it is still my recommendation that we undertake that so that we secure the building.
Okay.
Through the chair, if I can just add to that, Rebecca. So the Cardex system isn't a new and singular system that would be implementing in the library. We currently have it in the municipal building as well as at the zoo and other places around council. So it's not a new piece of technology.
So is it the same as what we've got?
Correct.
So why would it cost 87K?
I haven't had a look at the numbers in detail. I'd have to do that.
So we can't just extend the one we've got out, basically? I mean, it's really just the cost I'm thinking of.
It costs $87,000 because it is basically requires rewiring and gates, magnetic gates, and the technology and so forth, and it has its own processing unit and so forth. So $87,000 is probably does reflect the cost effectiveness of extending our system.
Okay.
If we're doing a standalone system in the library, it would be I wouldn't say significantly more expensive than that, but would be more expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. A question for clarification, Lance, on page 104, C1, C2, C3, the improvement costs of 1.6 million, a facade upgrade 1.3, and the laneway entrance 210,000. Those are all either in the CCTP as projects or the library's plans, aren't they? And so you said before that those will come in through discussions with the LTP, so they're not lost off a list anywhere.
No, so when we have that discussion, we will bring a number of options, a bit like this, that'll have some A, Bs and Cs and things like that. So then if we get an indication from elected members what the majority view is, then obviously it'll go through a briefing, then obviously a voting, so it'll be up to you to make those decisions.
Yeah, great. Don't want to lose those then. Mayor Andrew, I'll move the staff recommendation to do the work when you're ready.
Thank you. Seconded by Paula. Thank you. Gary. Councillor Gary.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Just on the Cardex system, can you just be a bit more precise on how it works? So we've got these things, and that means and so it'll be staff will have one of these. Okay, and that means that only certain people can go to certain rooms. But at the moment, we've got a building, it is a public building, the library, and you know, everyone can walk in there. And so does this open a door where staff can go and hide if someone's gone nuts in there? Is that what happens?
At present, all staff areas within the building are controlled by PIN pad. And our instead of a Cardex system, so there's no system currently within the building. So the Cardex would provide access for staff into all staff-only areas. It also provides secure.
But at the moment, someone's chasing you with a knife.
You'd have to pin pad.
1, 2, 3, 4, bang. Yeah. Now you're going to do this.
Yes.
Bang.
Yes.
And that's the improvement. That's all.
Correct, and it also locks down, so the fire exits at present do not have any security at all on them, so they don't have any closure. What the system would do, and they allow access within the facility up to all 3 floors and directly into staff-only areas. The Cardex would provide controlled access, but in the event of a fire evacuation, they would auto-open, providing safe exit from the building.
Okay, thank you. one of the first speakers today in the public forum talked about the CBD, and that was the report I asked to see. And she spoke about the CBD library, invigorating Garden Place and that sort of stuff. We've had a CBD library in Garden Place for a couple of decades. I asked Matt Stark and Steve McLennan the other day what has been the impact of Garden Place of the closure of the CBD library, and all they could say was there are fewer rat bags in Garden Place. What evidence do we have that a CBD library actually does? Because the CBD library has been in there for a long time. Garden Place has been sick for as long, if not longer. We've spent a number of times, we've done upgrades to the Garden Place, hoping it'll improve the place. It just seems to me that reality, when we've done it, the CBD library make no difference. In fact, you could argue that possibly a decent
your question, store, Councillor Miller.
What evidence have you got that that will be the case? And I know you haven't suggested that. I'm just asking.
I think there's the easy answer to that is over 400,000 people come into the Central Library. We haven't collected evidence whether or not people who are going to the library are shopping at stores and things like that. And obviously, a lot of the information that we've gathered has been anecdotal, but I think just the fact that you're not having a large number of people coming in there would have some effect. But as you say, it is quite a complex matter around the activation with other things happening in there as well. And the library has had events outside and tying them with the Business Association and other organisations too. We have a lot of events inside with young folk, wriggle and rhyme and meetings.
But my point is,
like
one of the selling, quote unquote, one of the selling points of the CBD is that it will revitalise the areas around it. And I just don't, having lived it here for all my life, I've never seen that occurring. And the situation is that the central part of the city is not as healthy as we'd like to see it, and it wasn't as healthy as we'd like to see it. So I'd like to know if there's any, because we're spending lots of money here, lots of money that we're struggling to raise. I'd like to know there is some evidence that it would actually get that benefit, derive that benefit. So what is the evidence that it would derive that benefit? Because the reality is, a year ago, before the CBD library was open, we still had problems. We had everyone was grizzling about...
Gary, you've asked your question, I think. It's...
You got any evidence? Show me the proof.
I guess a recent example, as Lance said, we have a high number of visitation to our central library. Since the closure, the numbers have decreased by 150,000. So we do see clear evidence that people come and visit the central library. That brings families in. A lot of that use has been families attending events, and I think I've given previous examples where we run large-scale events in partnership with the community, the museum and things in Garden Place, and they haven't occurred this year, so there's not that family visitation. Internationally, central libraries are seen as cornerstones, and a number of cities are investing in central library facilities. The most recent example in New Zealand is Christchurch City's decision to reinvest in Central Library as an activation for this plaza area in Christchurch as part of the rebuild.
But you're assuming they've got it right.
Councillor Mallet, just as I support everything that Lance and Rebecca said, I think being the accountant to me, the key point is here at the moment we've got a building that has no value because we can't use it. And effectively, regardless of whether this building's used for a library or what, which we're supporting it is, by investing in this money to repair it, we actually get an asset that we can use. So it's not necessarily a question about what it's bringing to the city. In this case, it's actually about...
Well, it is. There's lots of angles on this one, Richard.
Yeah, no, but then my challenge here is until such time as we repair it, we can't use it for anything. And that's my angle. So I get the question. I'm just saying, at a real simple level, it's about reinstating an asset. Then we can have the debate what it's used for.
Councillor
Paula. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just going to follow on really from Angela. She partially answered my question. have my question answered, I think, which is this is just about putting the library at the best cost, the quickest pace back into the central city in a more or less fully functioning way, right? So the other things that are considered improvements, such as one that I like, which is opening up the frontage to be a good tenant in Garden Place and to create engagement and flow between the public. Does that, it sits where the in the LTP, does it? So we can agree on this today, and then if we want to get money for doing something to upgrade the frontage of the library, to get those offices out of the front and let people interact, that is a place we debate in the LTP alongside the other improvements, the implementation of the plan, etc. Is it?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you. Also following on from Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Southgate, have we looked at I agree with the first part, but with, for example, the 1.6 million improvement costs and everything, have we looked at joint venturing with some coffee shop chain or something that they pay for part of it for the because they go into public places and they pay for part of the doing up and everything. Have we looked into anything like that? Asked any of them to do something to open up the front?
So what's in the report are the raw
Yeah.
Estimates of opening up the front. Some of that can, where the old physique shop used to be on the right-hand side as you go into the front of the library. There is opportunities to look at that. Have we had particular conversations with any commercial operators? My understanding is no, not at this stage, but that is an option. So those raw costs, what you're saying, if it was 1.6 million, could you offset that with, say, a $300,000 investment from a coffee shop or a bookstore or whatever, some other organisation? That's definitely a possibility.
That'd be great.
And that is a model that is seen in other cities throughout New Zealand and internationally, and it may not just be a coffee shop, it might be integrated with some sort of office space or something which is complementary to the library's changing function.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Okay, to put some sensible context here. So with 400,000 people visiting the library, you're saying a year, is that right? Correct? Yep, okay. So would you agree that the more people in Garden Place using the library would make it a safer central CBD?
I think research shows that if you activate places through various activities, I think Councillor Mallock brought up the point too, partially yes. I think as we discussed with the Central City Safety Plan review the other day at the CNS committee, there's other things that probably need to happen as well. There's a whole bunch of levers, but we would say partially yes.
So hand in hand with the Central City, the developers are looking at a new Garden Place, a new design for it. You see the Hamilton Library as a essential part of that?
I do, yes, and I think that's based on what's come out through our development of the strategic plan for our libraries going forward. Notwithstanding the fact that you can look at other locations for a central library as well. So, and I think that's what we've tried to outline in here, and that's what we discussed at the briefing. So there's potentially other locations. I think a key point is, which we try to outline in here too, is that none of our libraries are fit for purpose. They've all been shoehorned into old retail spaces and things like that. So, and I think the council in the past taken the opportunities in a cost-effective way where they've arisen to provide that service to the community. Okay. So we have got options around that.
All right, and obviously the card system is easy to use when a person's under stress as well, just a card system instead of trying to punch numbers.
Yeah, just on that, Richard and I are just mindful of staff and other people's safety, and we have had a number of incidents in our libraries and also other facilities, and I think there's been some discussion about our customer service centre too, and people's access. I think, you know, top of mind is some of the fatalities that have occurred in other parts of New Zealand in recent years. So I think we need to be prudent around that.
Yeah. Just lastly, is the Central Library, our main library here, obviously it holds a huge stock of information and books and that, is it classed as a regional asset? And have we asked for money from any other councils?
We do get money from other councils, so we have an arrangement with Waikato District Council. They pay us $300,000 a year for their residents, mainly the residents in the southern part of their district, to use our libraries. Have we asked Waipa? We've had discussions around them about shared services for a number of years. I was just talking to Gary Dyett the other day around could we re-look at that now that we've put our Kotui system in. Have we asked the regional council? No.
Thanks.
Gary, sorry mate, Gary, no. Okay, we're moving to debate now. So, Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I will keep this very brief. Look, I'm very supportive of getting on with it. Our libraries plan is very important to me and has been from the start. It sets the direction of progress to turn our libraries into innovative, smart places that are rich treasure boxes of imagination for our community. The plan is to create spaces within them, to move them into community hubs as well. So dare I say, let's do this. Let's fix our library and let's get on with it.
Councillor Mallett.
Oh, sorry. The response to that is let's tax this, which is exactly what we're going to be doing. I speak against this. I think that given the context that the City Council finds itself in with regards to the extreme pressures we have on our financial situation, that that technology is changing rapidly, that we have a alternative delivery mechanism in terms of our suburban libraries, that the CBD library is, I think, no longer an appropriate way to be delivering the sort of services we're trying to do, simply because it's very, very difficult to get into the CBD. It's not an easy place to get to. Most of the people who come here using the CBD library, I assume, are working in here. I don't know that many people come into the centre of town to use a library per se, which was not the case in the old days. Long story short, I think it's an irresponsible use of our ratepayers' money to be using this when the service that is being delivered can now be achieved through the suburban libraries and through our new technologies. And I think we would be remiss to put our hands across our eyes and our fingers in our ears and pretend the new technologies aren't here, that they are advancing and improving all the time. I was part of the library task force or working group in the last term, and to be honest, I felt that we were looking at a service that was struggling to find relevance. We were looking at things like running kids' Jesuitics classes in there. We were looking at, and we did these things. We were doing things like renting sewing machines and weed whackers through the library, and it actually just got a little bit Monty Pythonish at stages. I'm not sure if we're still doing that, renting stuff out. But I think we need to take a strong and courageous stand here.
Do we have a mover for an extension?
1 minute, yep.
And just protect...
I'll second it. 1 minute to go, Gary.
Thank you. And just protect our ratepayers, because I don't think that the money spent on a library on a CBD library will add the value or level of service that would be required if that money was spent elsewhere. There are other higher priorities, I believe, for our city and for our residents. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
So I support the recommendation. I also uphold the right of all elected members to share with their views, and I think that's very healthy, because I think this debate about the future of our library services is healthy. The irony with the presentation about South Shields in the UK, yes, that's a positive development, but it reminded me the other side of the story is as a result of the Tory government austerity measures and massive cuts to local government funding. Of course, all the little libraries that have been closed, and my own local library in my other hometown in the UK, Doncaster, went there when I was there the other year, and of course it was going to be staffed just by volunteers, and there was an absolute, and it just showed to me in terms of our social fabric how crucial the library service is. The motive of the majority of this council, I think, is pure and good. There was an unexpected earthquake issue with the Central Library. We took that opportunity to have a very good look at the options. This is about trying with limited money to get the best Central Library service we can. There are, in my view, some potential future options down the track which we should still look at. We also have great motive in trying to get a Rotorua Library up sooner rather than later. Unfortunately, a shared service model with the local high school up there doesn't seem to be a goer. We have a wonderful example in Christchurch where Christchurch and a local school work really well together to effect a service. Without further ado, I will be supporting this motion to reopen the library with the improved security, and I think that is good, but I hope this is not the end of the discussion. Obviously, through our LTP, with the massive challenges we have through our LTP, we must continue to focus on the preservation and improvement of a wonderful library service in this town, in my view, and an absolute commitment to the wonderful good that comes out of our public library service.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you. I was surprised in one of our first meetings as a councillor, we got told that the library was going to close, and I thought it was going to be a matter of months, and as that dragged out and dragged out. Look, I don't see the debate having ended. I dream of what Siggy was talking about, co-ventures like they're having in Rotorua with various things, but we've got to get back on the track first before we can have those discussions. We need a library. We need it fixed. I'm wholeheartedly supporting the motion to get it up and going. Regards to the cardiac system, thank you, I'm satisfied now. I thought it was some sort of panic room type situation, but really you're just trying to afford your staff the same safety that I'm entitled to as an elected official, so I'm fully in support of that now too, thank you. Listen, we've got to get back on the path. We owe this library to Hamiltonians. We've ripped it off them for a year. Look, I'm wearing blue today, so I'm not going to go for the let's do this, but I'll go for let's just keep delivering for Hamiltonians and let's get this damn thing fixed.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Well, I think the public have spoken very clearly and very strongly in favour of putting the library back in the central location. And we've already been told clearly today that this is the most cost-effective and the fastest option for the short and medium term for the library. Yes, we all acknowledge that in the LTP we need to look at the long-term libraries plan and how we start to implement some of the good aspects of future-proofing our libraries for this very fast-growing city. I'll be looking for evidence for that, and I'll be seeking some support from my colleagues here to improve our library services as we go forward. And I also share that passion for the idea that we could open up the front of the Central Library so those that are within it can see the wonderful public space outside, and we may have a playground and all kinds of things going on out there. And the people who are walking past in Garden Place can engage with the activities of the library as well, because I think that's a win-win. Love the idea of having a cafe back in there. It's funny how things come around and go around in time of history. So yes, no, look, I'm strongly in support of this. It's a win-win, my view. It's a shame that it got slowed down a little, but I think we've landed in the right place. Let's get on with it now, though.
Councillor Dove.
Thanks. I actually support both the library getting reopened in the building over there at this point in time, plus the Deputy Mayor's comments. I was disturbed at some of the murmurings and that going on when Councillor Mallett was talking. I absolutely defend his right to have his say on something like this. He's often wrong, but he's still got the right to have the say. I'm serious about that. We need to listen with respect to our views that are different from ours. I've been too often on the receiving end of that sort of treatment as well. I actually support more strongly than the Central City Library being open the retention and expansion of our suburban libraries network. I think they are much more, in my mind, the lifeblood of a library service in a city like Hamilton, with all the community development things that can flow from those libraries. And I've seen that work well in other cities. I've seen that work better in the past in Hamilton, and we also had a mobile library. I supported that staying. It was a pity it went. We've got some aspects of it back now. I'd like to see us look at something like that again. We're going to need to confront, as Martin has mentioned, the possibility of a library in Rotatuna, which I support, and in future in Peacocks and Rotakauri areas, which are a long way from our suburban libraries as well. So there's a lot of work to do in this space. But particularly, I don't think long-term that having a standard, ordinary, four-storey office block library in the central city is the best thing long-term for libraries in the central city. I want to see a modern one with good design that integrates much more with the parts of the community than that particular building does over there. And in the long-term plan, I think that's something we need to do. I've seen much better overseas than this is here long-term. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Siggy.
Much. Well, I definitely support the recommendation, and with the changes that might happen in Garden Place, it will add to the enhancement. And but we definitely have to open it up at the front. It's just too closed, and that probably might create some of the problems we've had in the past. It just looks a little bit like a bunker at the front at the moment to me. So. But with that said, we've got destination playgrounds. Why don't we do destination library? It could be something very special to attract more people into the city. And looking at being in the library quite a few times in Auckland, what a hub it is. It is quite amazing. And I can just see that Hamilton Library, the Central Library, could become a hub that way as well with some more enhancements. And so that's why I support it. Thank you.
Councillor Leo.
Thank you, Bishop. We closed this library last November, and that was as a result of a detailed seismic assessment. At that stage, we were told it would be closed for 3 to maybe 6 months. Here we are almost 12 months down the track, and nothing really has changed. At the present time, of course, we're losing the facility of our reception area downstairs, which could be utilised in other ways. Last week, I was at the dentist, and it's very hard to talk to your dentist while she's working in your mouth. And she badgered me the whole time I was there about the closure of the Hamilton City Library. I have to go back on Monday, and I daren't go back without actually saying to her, well, look, we're going to actually open this library. So I'm fully supportive of this recommendation.
Councillor Jones.
People talking about wearing red and blue. Well, I'm wearing a black tie today. It shows you where I'm going. But look, I think 400,000 visits a year indicate that there's your proof, and if Councillor Gary wanted the proof, there's the proof that people visit the library. I'm just hoping 100,000 of those visits are not from the vagrants. But we do have to make it safer for the staff working in there, and also the people that use the library, and we do have to keep those sort of people out that have caused issues in the past. So the cardiac system's really good. So look, I'm fully supportive. Let's get this library up and running again. It has been out of action for a very long time, since we came into office last year. So it is about time we got it up and running. And so I'm for the recommendation.
Let's do this.
No, let's not do this. Let's do that.
Okay. So I'm concerned about the Central City Library, and I don't believe that it's a community hub. That could be and it should be. I'm all for getting this library up and running again now to get some direction, but I do have serious concerns about the model, and I do believe that it needs to be looked at seriously. So just to flag, I'll probably be bringing something forward in a 10-year plan as to some ideas around that for further discussion. So we'll go to the board to vote.
The motion is carried 10 for, 1 against.
Okay, just before we move on to our next item, is there anyone waiting in the public gallery for a particular paper? We've covered everyone off. What were you waiting for? Paper 18. Okay. So can we go to paper 18 next, please? So it's page 159. Yes.
Andrew, and I appreciate accommodating the audience. I think it's a good idea. Having said that, I do know that there were some people who were intending to come along a little bit later. It was well down the agenda, so I guess we might be disadvantaging a few people who were likely to pop in just before lunchtime or a little bit around then. I'm just leaving that with you, purely your decision, of course. But people do read the agenda that way. They do kind of estimate when something might likely come up.
Holly. Okay, so we'll have this item. We have other items directly after lunch, so I can't guarantee, Holly, when it's going to be. But if you'd like to leave your number with Democracy, they may be able to give you some sort of a steer, but I'm just not quite sure where it's going to happen now, where it's going to fall, sorry.
And we do contact Mary. And we do contact.
Okay, so we'll just leave it where it falls then. Thank you. Okay, so we move to item 10 on page 39. Seconded by Councillor James. All those for?
Too quick, Mayor Andrew. Too quick.
Good morning.
So do we have any questions? Any debate?
I do need to make a clarification or two.
Is there any changes to the report?
There is an amendment required for attachment 4, which is the recommendation.
Okay, so cover off any changes to the report only, please.
Okay, so the changes to the report that you are unaware of, there was some attachment 2 recirculated yesterday. Attachment 4, application 19 has accidentally been left off due to editorial processes. That applicant, we are recommending financial support, and that I have given governance a revised table as attachment 4, which I understand is going to be electronically circulated.
So could the Democracy Manager just guide us to exactly where those changes are?
So Alice let me know this morning that there was a change to one of the attachments. We haven't yet circulated it, but I will put it on OneDrive this morning.
Okay, could we, sorry, we're going to have to leave it. You're going to have to get a copy and circulate it for members, and we're going to...
It's just literally, I think it's just one line missing.
Okay.
Off one of the attachments, so I will flick it out now.
Can we get that up on the board then? We just need to be clear on what we're agreeing to.
So would you like me to, while that's occurring, go through the report in general?
We should have read it and come back to you with any questions we had already.
All right.
So that's how I'd like it to run, is people read the agenda carefully beforehand, go back to general managers and ask questions pre the meeting.
Oh, that's when I was just trying to fill the gap for you.
Okay. So we do have questions now, so we'll start with Councillor Paula.
Thank you very much on the report. This is an area that I've had a little bit of a look at before, but I can't profess to understand how it all works. So I'm just asking some general questions. On the 13, when you, executive summary, point 13, when you say the Heritage Fund does not accrue, given that we got so little heritage left we've really got to work with what we got. Why not? I don't understand the context. Perhaps I should have asked that question sooner, but I wasn't around that much yesterday.
So what is the question?
Why not? Why can't it accrue, and could it accrue?
So the council decision to set up a heritage fund through the previous LTP was a set fund, an annual set fund of 100,000, not to be accrued, not to be rolled over. What would I be able to do as a councillor to have another think about that part of that policy? I understand through this LTP process you'd be able to have raised those discussions.
So I could raise that as a potential change. Thank you. The other question around that, which is related, is these are applications, so we're taking a responsive view to external applications, helping them through it and making decisions. What proactive or strategic program sits over this to prioritise? I mean, I know you've got the criteria, but as a city, what strategy do we have to prioritise and look and stock take and understand the heritage aspects that are left?
So through the Heritage Plan, there are a number of actions that staff have been undertaking since the adoption of that plan in 2016.
Yeah, I did see that.
Part of that is a full thematic study of the city and its heritage stories to then identify whether or not, through that we will be identifying whether or not there are buildings or items that are presently are not protected and should be. And if there are particular areas of the city that haven't had that lens put over it at this time, so such Rotatuna, for instance. So that work is underway now, and it's the actions are all set out in the Heritage Plan.
Thank you. One final question on that is, when we get these applications, which was a little bit tricky to get through the numbers and cross-references, is there any possibility of having a photograph of the property that we're talking about? Because it had, Wellington Street, and I happen to know the ones in Wellington Street. My mother was involved in the heritage stuff out there. But there's a lot I didn't know. I thought, what is that? Is that a railway cottage? Is that what it is? But just having a visual will help me as a councillor understand what in fact we are preserving across the city.
We can do that in the
future.
Thank you.
Alice, could I get you now to explain the change? Everyone's had it texted to them, emailed to them as well, I understand. So if you could just talk us through it, please.
So the application 19, which is up on the screen now, all the information has been circulated to you and contained in the attachment 2 relating to this application, and attachment 3 with regards to Heritage New Zealand's peer review of staff's recommendations. So the essence is that in terms of the recommendation table that councillors are making their decision on, it is missing. So for due diligence, it needs to be inserted back into that table. So the information is already been pre-circulated with the full agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
One question on one particular application, and that was the Southall Chapel. Can you give me more detail as to, and please don't give me the answer, there were better applications, with regards why the fire alarm wasn't approved in the Southall Chapel?
Certainly. First of all, I do have to declare a potential conflict of interest, and that I did not assess this application because my daughter attends that school.
Yep.
But in terms of the information, we are saying that, and we have spoken to Southall with regards to prior to them putting in their application, that it is an activity that warrants consideration. Mm-hmm. But we have to look at the buildings that are of probably more risk for the city, and in terms of looking at the money that we have available to provide that degree of protection of higher risk elements, we have at this stage not recommended any funding. However, as the report does say, we do feel in paragraph 22 actually that they should look at coming back.
Okay.
For next round.
If it hasn't burned down.
Well,
joking.
I would hope not.
Same. Thank you.
It's a beautiful building.
Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Just a sort of a process thing. The attachments are not easy to use, not because they're big or anything like that, but they don't seem to, like the thing that you've given us here, which is the one you've just handed to us, doesn't have an address or a description.
No, because that is our staff analysis. I can modify that for next time, but the number refers, and then if you go to attachment 4, it has the...
But I mean, if you're going to put the number down, you might as well put... I mean, and Dave suggested there may have been some reason we took those out. Have we asked you not to put the names in for privacy reasons or something?
No, we've got the names and we've got the addresses. We have taken out, because it's in a public open session, we have taken out certain identifiers, but because
What's the rationale for that? It's public money being distributed to people?
Yes, but we do ask them to provide some information that is probably more of a commercially sensitive, because they require to actually provide quotes from businesses in terms of how much a piece of work will cost. So staff haven't analysed that. We have had that peer review through Heritage New Zealand. So if it was in a public excluded, that could be easily shared, of course.
Okay, it just makes it very hard to make any sort of judgment on these things
Well,
when you don't,
your number
don't even know what you're looking at.
Well,
Yeah.
but if you went to application number 1
Yep.
and in appendix 2, attachment 2, you then go to attachment 4, which is the one that you are making your decisions on, you would then be able to cross-reference the person's name and the address of the property. So attachment 2 is just is setting out.
So attachment 2 doesn't
assessment.
stand on its own, then, does it?
No, and it's not supposed to. But the report and its attachments are
Okay,
collective.
so the rationale you used was that it's a public thing. Sorry, you're trying to protect someone's privacy, I think, or quotes and things like that. But through a rather torturous process, you can actually match the thing to the person's name. So why don't you just
No, I'm saying
make it
that
easy?
I'm not. I haven't excluded a person's name purposefully. The person's name is in attachment 4.
Yeah.
Attachment 2.
And that gives us the address too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the ranking of the building.
Yeah.
Attachment 2 was the staff's workings that Heritage New Zealand then reviewed. So I'm giving you the complete package. What we haven't provided, because we're in open, are the actual applications with all the business elements to it with regards to quotes and costs.
Yeah, and I'm not interested in that. I just wanted this to be a bit more user-friendly for us.
Which I can provide
Okay.
in the next round. That's not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay, moved by Mark, seconded by Councillor James. Moving to debate, Mark.
Just very briefly, look, I think there's a common feeling around. I will move in favour of it, but I would like to give a slight ticking off. It was a very, very hard document to work my way through. Oh, has it been moved?
Apologies.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I have, sorry, Deputy Mayor to speak first. Okay, back to Mark.
Yep. Oh, you finished?
Yep.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. That was lovely, Martin. Yeah, look, I'll support it, but it was a very, very hard document to support, and that it was very hard to understand what I was looking at. And I echo the points that Gary made and Paula to a degree as well. One thing I do worry about, and having sat on the Well Energy Trust for 13 years, doing grants round after grants round, is that a lot of the approvals we gave were for reports on seismic ability rather than on seismic stuff, rather than using our limited funds on actually fixing stuff. So I'm very nervous about us getting, well, I guess what did I write down here? The irony isn't lost on me that we're actually funding people to investigate a report, probably back to us, so that we can give them permission to do some work on stuff. And I just think with that limited funds, I think maybe we could be a little bit more effective. I'm disappointed with this other one. I think having seen that building, I think it's a wonderful building, and a fire alarm I thought was not only going to save the building but potentially save lives. So I was disappointed to see that, but it's not my job to assess these things. So yes, I'll support it, but next year could we please have it a lot simpler for the more basic minds like mine? Yep, that's all.
This is unusual, but Alice, can I just ask you to comment on the earthquake side?
Certainly. The issue with the earthquake work is that they are required to do extensive engineering design work first, which is exceptionally costly. Part of the Heritage Fund was a set-up to provide that support. So if you take the St Peter's Cathedral, last round, Council supported the first step in that set of engineering and site analysis work. Then we have got people who have come back, they have done earthquake engineering work. they now will be able to come back, and they have got the documentation for us to understand clearly what the physical works are, so that the community's money is spent very wisely.
Just very quickly in
No,
response.
I don't want to get into debate. We're in debate, so that was unusual that I let Alice reply. So, Councillor, that's not the time. Councillor Southgate.
Look, I'm supportive. I'm strongly in favour of it. I just want to suggest that going forward, apart from the photographs, which would be helpful, I would like to spend some time in a workshop or whatever, just understanding a more strategic and proactive approach to heritage. We do have some beautiful heritage, but we're not a city that's retained all of its heritage. Some of it's gone already. And looking at international successful cities, or even some in New Zealand like Oamaru and so on, where they have preserved their heritage, they have really enlivened the urban form and made the place a better place to live. So let's be a leader in that space, proactively.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Exercising my right of reply, is there any other speakers? I just want to, very quickly, there is, acknowledge Alice Morris and the team for the wonderful work they've done in this particular case, and of course it's been peer reviewed by Heritage New Zealand, so it's a very good and robust process, which I think is good. We are arranging, Alice and team arranging a special workshop around heritage and to look at this fund and how it moves in the future and some details, and that's where we can sort of get down into detail. And I'm very keen to talk about the potential rollover of unspent money, so that 1 year you may be able to you may be able to put 2 years funding together in order to knock off big projects. And but I think the really excellent work of former Deputy Mayor Gordon Chesterman and the panel, which was under the previous council, is now very much bearing fruit. So I'm really looking forward to this item as a workshop item, and it will give all members the chance to get into detail. But it is, in my view, a very good fund.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. All those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Alice. And we'll take a couple more items first. I just want to keep this moving. So we'll move to item 11, page 74.
Item 11, page 74, Councillor.
Chris. Excuse me, Chris. So do we have a mover? Moved by James, seconded by Mark. John. Okay. And we've got one speaker, Gary. On page 74, paragraph D of the recommendation, I raised this before. It says approve staff to progress with the establishment of the appropriate easements. I would suggest that needs to be stronger, to say subject to staff establishing the appropriate easements. General Manager? Or, okay, in the absence of a General Manager? Chief Executive? Okay.
Hurry up, Chris.
No, this is question and asking whether the recommendation needs altering.
Yeah, so we do need to go out and negotiate the easements with the owners, and there's more than one owners.
Yep.
So I'm pretty confident that we've got the right case to get the easements on 12 Valley Terrace, but we need the easements on the either side. If we can't get those, we do have provisions under the Local Government Act for access. Yep. So I'm just not quite sure how that would land at the moment. So,
but I guess that thank you for that background. But what we're trying to do is we don't do this unless we are sure that we have access to those pipes in the future. And the wording is just too soft. Approve staff to progress with the establishment of appropriate easements. It doesn't even say to secure appropriate easements. It just says we're going to go through a process. So I just would like, the whole thing is conditional on us actually establishing those easements, and I don't think the wording of the recommendation there is strong enough.
Point of order, it's not actually conditional on that, as the answer said, Gary. It's there is a plan B that's able to be done if the easements don't go through. So there's two ways.
That's exactly my point. Do we want this thing to be conditional on that, or do you want it to be okay. Yeah, my point is that we need to be stronger and say, yeah, we have to get these easements before we can do the work.
Well, if I can ask a question there, Chris, is it the staff's recommendation that we try for the easements first, but be prepared to go through the Public Works Act process if we can't get them?
Yeah, it's probably more the Local Government Act and our entry requirements there. So look,
either of those processes ensure we get access to the pipes? So my point is not about how you do it, but we don't go ahead until we are sure we have got access to those pipes. Otherwise, we just get in the same position again in 20 years, don't we?
If you want to make it conditional, the establishment of appropriate easements or access rights would probably be better for me. Because it might just not be the easement, it might be that we have other ways of doing that. So look, it's probably more important that we get the easement on 12 Valley Terrace and less important on the other properties, because it's only for maintenance purposes, clearing leaves and anything. So if we had any major work, I think would in the future would be in a different ball game.
Chris, so you're suggesting afterward appropriate easements or access rights?
Yes, and if you wanted to make it conditional on, to pick up Councillor Mallett's point, conditional on the establishment of appropriate easements or access right, easements in gross or access rights.
Yeah, and you can use the word conditional or subject to. I'm comfortable with both of those.
Okay, Councillor Dave.
No, it's just the Richard.
Thank you. Councillor
Conditional on one or
Angela.
the other.
Yeah.
So we have that up on the board there.
Yeah, we'll get it up on the board while we ask some questions, and then we'll come back to it to make sure everyone's happy.
Yes, it was.
Chris, when is the work due to start? When can it start?
Look, I'm not sure of the exact answer on that, but with this decision, it clears the way to start immediately. Our aim is to make the best use of the season coming forward. So we've still got these access issues to sort out and resource consent issues, so it will still be a few weeks away.
And how long will it take?
I think it's something like 3 months or something like that is the period we've allowed.
And will we fit that work in with the resident? Like, we'll be mindful of, obviously, Christmas time and holidays and things like that, or we just go in all guns blazing to get it done?
I think her preference is all guns blazing, but we would clearly do that in consultation with Christina.
So as long as it's
I think the access issues are probably more problematic for the neighbours. Yeah. So we really need to look after the neighbours, and we've started some discussions on that already, because that is through the Christmas period, as you say, and through a summer period. So it's a big impact on them, and we're very mindful of that, and are talking very closely with them and how we can mitigate those impacts for them more than Christina.
And when it's all finished, who's responsible for returning the site to? I haven't been there, but she had landscaping and gardens and things like that.
So the council decision really clears the way for us to do the work and to reinstate the property to consent requirements, which would be a really a fairly high standard, but reinstatement of any ornamental planting would be on Christina.
And that, okay, so the ornamental planting would be on her. Yeah. But we'll reinstate it to
We'll have to reinstate it to a very high standard for the resource consents.
All right. So is there an opportunity for her or for us to work with her in terms of, I mean, we have a municipal nursery with some plants in that would be very low cost for her to access. We can help her out along those lines?
Yep, we can certainly do that.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Just before your questions, Councillor Siggy, Gary and Dave, just check the wording to make sure you're happy while we have these questions. Councillor Siggy.
Just one question from me.
Councillor O'Leary, with the trees she has got there now, are they, because you might have to remove some of them, can some of them be saved?
Look, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would suggest that if they could, we'll do everything we could to save them.
Okay, that would be nice.
The ones that are still there.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just ensuring these guys are happy. James, do you want to speak? You moved? No. Does anyone else like to speak to this?
Just quickly, if I might, just want to recognise the leadership that Ziggy has shown in this matter. I think that should be noted in the minutes, because while a lot of councillors, we all took an interest in it and followed it, I know that you did above and beyond what many of us did in this matter. So thank you for that.
Okay, all those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Okay, page 75. I'll move. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Leo. All those for? Any against? Carried. Item 13, page 76. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Bunting, seconded by Councillor McPherson. All those for? Any against? Carried unanimously. Item 14, page 77. Calvin? So do we have a mover? A move by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor O'Leary.
That is an amendment.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we'll just back up there a little bit. So we're on page 77, and we'll go straight to Angela first, who has a motion to put. Yeah, okay. No, you're first, Angela. I didn't realise, no one had told me you had an amendment or a motion, so.
Okay. So my motion's on the board, but you're going to questions first.
Yeah, well, let's get your motion up so we can ask questions around your motion. So would you like to explain your position?
Yes, sure. Look, I just, the staff recommendation was a bit loose for me, and the motion that I've drafted basically is supporting the Waikato Means Business model in principle, but I'd like to see the final proposal and recommendations of the model brought back to us for final decision, because this report is written that this is sort of the done deal today, and I want to see what the Mayoral Forum says, and that information to come back in an agreement with finalised funding, and want to look at the management model and the government's model. So I just need more information, and I think rather than just signing it off today.
And just, I'm comfortable with the recommendation.
Yep.
The other point is we don't need a recommendation to put something into the 10-year plan. You vote on 10-year plan inclusions as part of the 10-year plan. So we can still put the funding into the 10-year plan to make sure it's ring-fenced, and effectively this gives us direction to do so still.
And if I might, from the briefing, Dallas the chairman did say they would come back once they had had a full round of discussions with councils to then bring exactly that. So no problem with inclusion.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Siggy. All right.
And I haven't.
So, Angela, had you finished with questioning?
Oh, no, I haven't started my questions. You just asked me to explain the motion, so thank you. Calvin, can you give me a bit of an idea? I know it's a little bit hard, and you mentioned in the report around we sort of spend around $50,000 per annum I'm on page 78, but sort of points 15 to 17, sort of doing economic development activity, but that excludes staff costs.
Yep.
Is that sort of still relevant? Is that still really what we do? I mean, I know in our activities we spend around $270 million we call economic development, but that's Claudelands in our stadia and things like that. So are you talking, in this figure here, A, is it right, and then B, you're sort of talking around things like that Hamilton Invest website that
Correct.
You've just done and other stuff like
Yep.
that?
Yeah, so that's correct. So as per paragraph 13, where it's as defined as business development, business innovation, and that's on a sector development, as opposed to the core business that we do of roads and pipes and the like. So yeah, we don't have a specific economic development team. We just we have the economic agenda strategy, which is part of the Hamilton plan, and the workload that came out of the B&I subcommittee of last administration was to reinvent that in some way, and simply given the resource constraints we had, we've done it under that way of points 15, and it's really just been where we repackage information that we use in other forms, i.e. the housing data, the growth data, and we package that in a way that makes it usable for the economic sector. Excuse me, and all of those outputs are from across different staff teams and different staff. So where we spend that 50K is, as you say, quite rightly, the website, the videos, the prospectus, the quarterlies, any sector reports, for example, the hotel demand assessment we did, that sort of thing is where we spend the 50K, specifically around where we define economic development around that business development, sector development type approach.
So would we, if this model goes ahead when it comes back to us with the detail, do we save any money? Do we stop doing some work in that space?
No, I wouldn't envisage we would. Some of the parts, for example, the Hamilton Invest website, the way it's been set up, because it's under, with new technology now, the old thinking used to be one website per organisation with lots of activity, as we're now it's more around many avenues into a coordinated and linked approach. So that would just effectively be unbolted from council and handed over, but all of the information that we still provide would still be useful at a city level. So the growth data, the prospectus, the video. Now how we might link that in or do something more collective is up for debate, but $50,000 would be about what we'd still spend, I would imagine.
And it's a point that Dallas made, it was that what he's suggesting is going to sit above. He doesn't expect there to be any change to the level of economic development activity. We're very lean on what we call direct economic development activity. Some other local authorities, however, aren't as lean, and they're not expecting to make any savings in their budgets either. There might be some negotiation about edges in terms of who does what, but for the most part, the local stuff will stay local and the regional stuff will be regional. Yeah,
and I mean, you might recall a prospective mayoral candidate used to be our only economic staff member, but we've included that role or those tasks across wider teams to pull together that information, and then I lead that with various other SLT members where we're hosting delegations and the like.
Two other questions. I think around mid last year, and I wasn't at that meeting, but there was a meeting, I think Dallas Fisher was there, we had some staff there, I don't know if you were there. It may have been I think it was the former mayor that asked for it to sort of talk about, what can we do in this space. Yes. And I understood that those people around the room were sort of not as keen on doing something regional. They wanted to be something to be Hamilton focused. That's not what Dallas is proposing with this. So can you shed any light on why that's changed?
Well, no, I actually think that's incorrect. I was at that meeting, and the meeting was that they would be supportive of a regional approach because the sectors aren't bounded by, business isn't driven by councils. It's driven by sectors which are wider than simple council boundaries. But they felt that a coordinated approach where councils could look at how they do their economic development areas as well as their core functions. And I think that's happened. I mean, the mayoral plan, the Waikato Men's business has got some legs in the recent 12 to 18 months, which means that the business community are coming on board. And at the presentation, Dallas had noted that they'd already had committed around 450K of business pledges, I guess is probably the easiest way to say it, and that would then come back in the final proposal to council.
And it's not proposed, I hope, this is one of the reasons for my motion, that the Waikato Men's Business Steering Group will then make up the board or the new management structure, is it?
No, not at all. So I'm just trying to find, there is the model of governance in the attachment as presented. Just trying to find where that model is on pages 90. So there is an expectation that the steering group is just simply there to put the model forward and do the work to then establish a new, as you see on page 90, the new Waikato Regional Economic Development Authority board. How that's made up again would need greater detail, and we would ask Dallas to come back and present that once he's got wrap up of his funding rounds.
Okay, and last question, on page 79, under point 19, in some of the discussion, it talks about that an amalgamation of this agency with Hamilton and Waikato Tourism wouldn't, well, it says would not include, so I'm assuming that they had that discussion. Can you just sort of tell me why they discounted that? What were the reasons of not amalgamating with them?
Certainly, because of the, I think the feeling that Hamilton Waikato Tourism has got runs on the board already, and they significantly have industry funding attached to their activities, so they didn't want to disturb that. And again, that sits with under the airport board as well, so unwinding that. So it just made sense that they would talk about business development under key sectors outside of tourism. That's similar to different models, even within the Waikato, Taupo are a separate RTO, or Regional Tourism Authority, as is Tourism Coromandel Tourism. And so they just felt it made sense to leave that entity doing its work, but have co-board members as per the board structure on page 90.
So really no, I mean, Waikato Tourism is fundamentally about economic growth, isn't it? So no economies of scale, no real benefits?
Well, no, I wouldn't say there's no real benefits. I think that there's some infrastructure and some economic development works that tourism would benefit from, and that if that was aligned, then you would see that benefit. But again, it's early, as you said, it's early days, and we need to see the detail around how that might roll out. So I think it's a fair question. It's probably just one I can't answer until the board's established.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Kelvin, this is a big departure from the City Council being a provider of core infrastructure and the outfit that throws a whole lot of red tape into the system and slows things down, with all tongue in cheek.
Yes, that's a
so, which is where I'm more comfortable with council being.
Yep.
How are we going to know that it's working?
Look, I think that question came up also at the briefing, and Dallas talked about actually having some, and it's noted in the report, and it may well be, it's in the attachment as well, that one of the areas of weakness in this space across the numerous bodies there are is the weakness in that reporting. So again, I think it's a fair question to ask, how would you know, and it's a question that you should ask in terms of what are the indicators that are going to show that it's working. So when the question was raised at the briefing, Dallas talked about, well, there's the usual indicators of employment numbers, the GDP, the type of things that we now report back quarterly would be the standard.
But how do you know that's as a consequence of this group, or it's just the builders and the engineers and the other guys innovating and doing what they've done forever?
Yep, so I think...
and we slow them down in doing it.
Well, I mean, you often ask Councillor Gary for evidence of how things are working, and you often lambast the district plan and the red tape, and yet the
not
evidence
often, always.
Yes, and yet the evidence is contrary to your argument, and that the city is growing fast, the economy is growing fast, the employment numbers are growing faster, the CBD numbers vacancy rates are declining, and yet. So anyway, to point to your question.
But do you know why that is?
Well, I would,
you're assuming
I would think it's a mixture of the fact that there is an operative plan that enables, for example, in the city, apartments to be developed, as of a recent note in the media. And I would say that it's a contribution of all. It's not any one thing. But what I would point out, and Dallas made this point, is that whilst you'll be able to show the economy as a whole and and you may not be able to point to a contribution, there would be specific projects around specific sectors. So he used examples around the Potiki Wharf, for example, that would have a specific project that would follow through and show quite substantial input. And there were sectors here that he's mentioned, for example, Te Aroha being the spa capital. We've got strengths in agri-tech business. How do we leverage government funding into that to show that? So around, I take your point, and I'm not trying to be facetious, but around specific sectors and specific projects, yes, I think you could show.
But all of those specific...
Sorry, Gary, Councillor Gary, I was going to just add to that, but if you want to finish your question.
I was just going to say, in all of those specifics, you've got master builders, you've got federated farmers, you've got chambers of commerce, you've got any number of economic groups that go and fund themselves and try and improve, try and negotiate with our council and try and negotiate with, and also deal with the market and training and all sorts of things. I just wonder, how is this thing going to add any value? I mean, it strikes me that mostly what this thing has been done, organised for, is to suck a bit more
Gary,
money out of
what's your
central.
question?
Is it sucking more?
What's your question?
There's a whole lot of questions coming out of this. Okay, how is this thing going to be any different than that? And is it any more than simply how can we suck a bit of more money out of the central government?
Can I jump in and respond?
Please feel free.
Yeah, so firstly, your comment when you introduced about the fact that you firmly believe in actually doing our trade right, so processing consents and so forth is a way of actually, that's our job, our core business, and we actually believe that it actually has a significant contribution towards the economy, and so that's why I created Calvin's team, is effectively by being more user-friendly, we will remove our burden on those parts of the community that use our services. Therefore, we won't slow them down. They can actually generate their business. So that's how we believe we contribute to the economic, and we can measure that. But measuring it is about the resource consent processing time, how we dupe people around, and how we upset people. And my apologies, Mr. Mayor.
Withdraw your word.
I withdraw that.
Say it, how we dupe people around.
Yeah, that's right.
We do badly.
And so we don't do it badly. We're improving all the time in that space. This here is definitely needed in the region just because of the level of inefficiency that does exist across multiple boundaries. Businesses don't care about boundaries. They don't, they don't
I know that.
They don't change their hat when they cross the boundary. No. So this provides an opportunity for a industry-led mechanism to start changing the way that businesses engage with each other, but also businesses engage with us. So there will be specific projects that we can say directly, if we complete this project, there's outcomes, but there will also be direct, there's qualitative and quantitative outcomes. There will also be the ability by which we can leverage and get funding from central government for investment as well, which we can measure. So there will be other contributions in that respect. There's the feedback we'll get. There'll be specific industries we can say that through that entity, we've actually brought them to the community as well. So there are some stuff we can measure in that respect. But I agree, we need to actually probably do some proper economic impact assessment of this stuff to test it in the long term, to actually see if it's adding value. Because if it's not, we should just walk away and do something else.
Well, and one of my concerns, I would like some response on this. These things tend to get captured by strong-willed individuals, and good on them because they're doing it for the best interests. But they end up, it becomes an insider club, and that would concern me also, because not everyone is connected with these people, and these, there's circles of people who, and they're all good folks, but they just end up almost siloing, the thing we talk about.
So I think that, and I think that's it.
I just don't think you can really respond to that one. I mean, all these activities, they want to set up all I can say is they want to set up per that governance structure on page 91, a governance structure which reflects the community. But you're right, even today there's organisations in the community that are led by strong personalities, and it's captured. There's so much we can do about it, and there's so much we can't.
Yeah, but it's when you're...
What's the point of order?
The point of order is that you made a ruling around the management of questions this morning, or an expectation, and if there's a ruling, and there is debate to come. This item is now taken in itself nearly 25 minutes with a raft of questions. This is how the day will slip, and there are so many important items this afternoon. I just want to draw that to your attention and say that we should stick to the plan of 2 or 3 short questions, or disabandon it altogether, but not a bit of both.
What I said was there'd be one chance for questions, so Gary, continue.
Okay. Just on page 79, you talk about, this is about the sale of Innovation Park. That's not certain yet, so how important is it that you get the Callaghan stuff, or not you, this entity?
No, it's a fair call. I mean, it's part of the intended program that they've put forward, and I think it comes back to Councillor Zan's point that once and Dallas has, or Mr Fisher has said that once he has done his rounds of funding, that he would then come back, and by that stage we would have a feel. And again, that paper is coming to this committee this afternoon. So you're right, it is part of the proposal as it stands, and they would come back and confirm that on the basis of the sale. Can I just add to the question you asked about the sucking of government fund? That is one of the sucking of the government fund that you spoke about. That is part of the regional entities plan. That it is indeed about unifying and working on behalf of the business sector to work with government to bring those projects forward. So, for example, you could argue that given some of our longer-term funding challenges around infrastructure, that the business community at a regional level might be quite useful working with us on how PPPs or funding bonds, for example, for infrastructure development may well work, or how we leverage the iwi economy, those sort of things that are done across a region that we as a city council simply don't have the arms and legs to get to.
Okay. And just page 80, paragraph 31, finishes off referring to priority 1 and smart growth.
Yes.
And it says they have shown positive responses from government. Can you just remind me what do you know what priority 1 is?
Yeah, so priority 1's the Western Bay of Plenty regional development entity, and aligned so much like this has been proposed as, and smart growth is very aligned to our future-proof sub-regional or regional project here. And so out of the smart growth project, and with full disclosure, I was involved in that in the early days. That led to the development of funding for the second harbour bridge crossing, for example, for the toll road out towards, was part of the plan and the funding alignment with government for the toll roads out towards
as well as smart growth,
Pongaroa. Correct, yeah. Oh. It's sub-regional, so Western Bay and Tauranga.
Oh. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Mark.
Actually, I might wait for debate, if that's okay. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Just a quick question. With the potential governance structure going forward, Minister Joyce put an official on the group beginning of last year or whatever, and because he thought it wasn't that important to get a top minister, a top government official on board. That would remain most likely. That close contact with directly through to the Minister of Economics through whatever minister was appointed.
I would imagine so. There's no. I mean, I can't answer that specifically, but I would imagine so. We would like to be closer to government as per the report. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Moving to debate, Councillor Ange.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I like the idea of setting up a focused economic development agency. I think to further progress Hamilton as a city and to sell our ideas and to sell ourselves and to create more opportunities. I just need to be comforted with more information, and that's what my motion's about. Like the theatre, the tourism and the tourism office, we are often asked for the larger chunk of the pie, a larger chunk of the funds, although I know that Waikato Regional Council is also contributing a large amount. And that's okay as long as I can see the benefits. And again, I don't have all of the details, so I'm looking forward to that coming back. Over the years, through different, although each agency has looked slightly different, there's been around 8 agencies, and some have been successful, like Innovation Park. I'm not saying that it's directly an economic development agency, but that's the outcome. Waikato Tourism, the outcome is economic growth, and those are good things. The secret, I think, to success is modelling priority 1, and I'm very familiar with it. They have a website like everybody else does, and they've got some fantastic things on there. If we are to be smart and to learn from the success of an agency like that, then for me, it absolutely has to be governed by really strong, proven business leaders. And for me, a non-negotiable will be any elected member involved on that board. I think that... What?
I just didn't hear what you said. Something about an elected member on the board.
So I said that the success for me, and if we're going to be successful like priority 1 in Tauranga, then it must be led by strong business leaders, not elected members. Oh, okay. My support is conditional on there being no politicians involved in the. You said you wanted one on. Oh no, on the governance board. So I'm happy to move it to the next stage. I'm interested in seeing the information. I want to know how it's going to be governed, what the operating model is, and like Councillor Mallett raised in questions.
I'll move.
I'll only need a few seconds. How it's going to be measured. So I need to do due diligence a little bit further than this and look forward to it coming back prior to the end of the year. Thank you.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Excuse me, I'll be supporting the motion. Originally, when I walked into the room today, I was kind of going to be putting an amendment in. In fact, I was going to be putting an amendment in that we review it every year. I like the Waikato Means business model. I like the personalities involved. I like what they're doing at the moment. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that 10 years ago, the mayoral forum was 5 mayors sitting around a table once a month. And I look at page 90 and I say, gosh, wow, hasn't it grown? 10 years down from the track from now, it might be a very different beast. The economy will change, the government will change, situations will change. So I would like to see an out clause in any discussion after every year. I'd like us to review it every year and to see whether it's meeting the objectives that we're setting and see if our objectives are on point. To put a $140,000 a year over 10 years, according to my maths, is a $1.4 million commitment, which at this stage I'm a little bit hesitant about. So, yeah, I support it, but I'd like to see some out options in there. So I'm pleased that this motion is going to say, let's breathe in a little bit and look a little bit more closely.
Councillor Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. I'll be supporting Councillor O'Leary's motion there as well. I was a little surprised, I must say, to find that Waikato didn't already have a sort of overlapping regional economic development agency. It just seems, after all these years, I remember back in the 90s, everyone seemed to have an economic development agency. They were all the rage, and some failed and some succeeded, but somehow we haven't got one, which surprised me. And I've looked across the Kaiwais over the last couple of years at the work that Priority 1 has done, in particular the explicit sort of focus they have had on attracting businesses and the way that they've publicly communicated their successes there as well. So I'm pleased we're heading this way. I think we're right to ask for detail and ask for results. Because these things in the past have not always worked, but I have a good feeling about this, and Dallas's involvement is a big part of that for me. So I think there's a compelling logic to combined force looking to attract the government funding that's available. So I think we really have no choice at this stage but to support this initiative. It's a good move.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. I would like to have been able to support Councillor O'Leary's recommendation, but I can't because it's minus any money that I can see at the moment. It says D? No, it says staff will prepare, but we're not committing any funding in D. We're just proposing that they'll prepare an agreement. Well, they'll put that funding in the agreement. Okay, so that's not how I read the words, which gave me some concern. If that is in fact the case, at least in the first couple of years, the funding goes forward and we progress, then I can support the recommendation because I think that Councillor O'Leary is absolutely spot on in terms of the accountabilities, and she has mentioned some of the models that work very successfully, and I've had personal connection over about 5 years with Bay of Connections and Priority 1 through the Regional Council. And they've been informing a lot of the work that's been going on in Waikato Means Business. I speak strongly in support of Waikato Means Business because the present government, and we don't know what comes next, but the present government has made it quite clear that it wants to work at a regional scale and it wants to see metros driving futures that incorporate regional scale and perspective. And that is why we fought tooth and nail to get that official on board. And Minister Joyce provided Waikato Means Business with what he considered to be one of his top functioning officials in the transport area, actually. But anyway, it's where it is. So yeah, no, I've always been a plan of this. Could it be working better? Could it be sharpening its focus? Of course, because it's been a collaboration over time. So we need. So I'm not sure where that leaves me. If this money goes in D, or a portion of it for it, then I'm, or if that is the intention.
Excuse me, stop.
All right,
Stop. Continue.
If
We're in
that is
debate,
the
we're not in question times.
If that is the intent, although point of clarity, I guess I can ask, because I'm clearly not understanding D as it was intended.
When you're finished, I'll ask the Chief Executive,
Yeah,
but this
so
isn't question time, this is debate.
If the money's in there, I will support the motion that's up on the board. If it is still discretional for some future part of the process, I will have to support the ones in paper.
Okay, we've had 3 people speak for the motion. Is there anyone who wants to speak against the motion? Okay, Gary, I'll come to you in a minute. Can I just ask the Chief Executive to clarify Paula's question first?
So there's basically no agreement in front of us to approve. Even if we approve money to, in principle, it's only in principle and it can be changed as part of the 10-year plan. What Councillor O'Leary has achieved with D is basically we will negotiate a draft agreement when we come back to the next meeting with an amount allocated to it, which will be the amount they've requested of 90. Sorry, it's indicated in D. Yes, that's right. It's pretty spelled out. So.
Well, it's not if you don't understand it directly.
Hey, excuse me.
Yeah, so that will address the fact that we will bring back an agreement with $90,000 in it. Yeah.
Okay, so I needed to be clear how to read it, because obviously if I read it and I don't understand it, then I'm at rights to ask for clarification.
Councillor Paula, it's very clear. Okay, we've been
it is now that it has been articulated.
So we've had 3 people speak for. We've got anyone who wants to speak against. Otherwise, we're going to the vote. Yep, Gary.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking against it, not because I don't think the objectives are not laudable, but I don't think the process is going to work. I would suggest that this money would be much, much better spent on council improving its own consenting and regulatory processes than being spent in a non-accountable organisation that has the best intentions, but I don't think it, and the problem is, again, we've got one of these sort of quasi-judicial type, not quasi-judicial is the wrong word, beg your pardon, just, yeah, quasi-authoritative organisations that we don't have any measure for seeing if its performance is working. We don't know what how it's going to report back, what its KPIs are. We don't know whether it's going to be making advances or holding us back, because I don't think there is any logical cause and effect between having an economic development agency or not. I think what is more important is that the regulatory system within our local authority is clearer and less regulatory, less red tape, and I think that's where the big gains can be gained in this, not from us trying to think we can set up some sort of, I think it's called a regional economic development agency, which I don't see at all as being useful.
Okay, we'll go to the board to vote. Can we reset, please? Okay, we're back on again. Yep.
The motion is carried 9-4, 2 against.
Thank you. We'll break until 10 to 12.